Thank you both of you guys for coming on. It's and thank you for everyone who's out there who's come on today and tonight. It's a bit later down in the southern end, so I do appreciate people giving up their time, their private time, to listen to our presentation tonight on HR matters and management of all things staff. And I thought it's a good opportune time to introduce Employsure generally, of course, and Al and Leanne, who have they will introduce themselves in a minute. But we've been using Employsure now for just over 3 years. We just clocked over our 3-year anniversary, and we'll let them explain what they do and how they do it. But from the other side of the coin, it's been...
Is Mandy out there?
She's had trouble getting on. Okay.
I might want to take over here. So it's Anita, guys. So Mandy and I have had lots to do with Employsure over the years, and we have just found them nothing but amazing and wonderful. They took over and changed all our contracts for us, cleaned us all up. Every time there's a contract change, we don't have to worry about it. They just send it to us. They make it happen. We've had some really sticky situations, and they have just always been there and guided us through it all. And I feel like now too, through these really dynamic times where there is such great change with employment, that they've got our back. And like we're in a very fortunate position at the moment. We're so blooming busy, as I believe Employsure are as well, that we haven't had to change any of our employment situations. But I know that if we really had to, all I'd have to do is pick up the phone and these guys would be there. Mandy, you want to add to that? Or she can't talk. Okay, because she couldn't get on her computer.
Okay. Yeah, so keep going.
Yeah, anyway, so we can do, I personally, and I know Mandy and I know Adrian, can do nothing but recommend these guys highly from our own personal experiences.
Yeah. So anyway, so with that intro, we'll hand over to Al to start the presentation.
Or Leanne.
I don't know who's actually doing it, but so what I'll do, guys, because I'm controlling it at this end, so I can record what the conversations that go on with questions and everything else. As you need to, I'll just flick on to the next slide and I'll just let you guys keep talking, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll leave it with you.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Again, thank you, Adrian and Anita, for inviting Al and I along tonight, and talking to you about Employsure and how we can help everyday businesses and employers navigate everything to do with employment relations and workplace health and safety, but particularly with the current crisis we have on our hands at the moment with COVID-19. There's been a lot of requests from all businesses, all industries, reaching out to help them direct which way to go and what they do next. So thank you again for having us on. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Employsure to those of you who don't know anything about us or haven't heard of us before. So I'll go through a bit about the services we offer, and then once I go through that, I'm going to hand over to Al for a Q&A. So please feel free to submit your questions and we'll try our best to cover off on them the best we can. So first off, why Employsure? At the moment, we look after in excess of 27,000 businesses across Australia and New Zealand. We partner with them to help navigate all the complexities when it comes around fair work, the different award interpretations, workplace health and safety, and the challenges that come with that. We too have been now sent home to do our work, and we're still full steam ahead working side by side with employers each and every day via Zoom. Normally we do maybe 1,200 advice calls a day, and I think that blew out, Al, you can correct me if I'm wrong, up to 3,500, 4,000.
Wow.
Every day. It's just gone crazy. Of course, we're expecting that. We've ramped up our services, and, we have the people there on the phones ready to help. Normally we have about 150 to 160 advisors on the phones. We're available 24/7, 7 days a week. So no matter what crisis you're going through or what challenges you're having, even without COVID-19, our team's there to support businesses every step of the way. We have a brilliant team of BDMs that are out on the road, normally doing face-to-face, but now doing Zoom and visiting workplaces via Zoom to help with documentation, compliance and policies and procedures, and also the current challenges that we have. And as I said, over 27,000 employers that we work with. If you just click to the next slide, yep. Adrian.
Yep, sorry.
So, no trouble. So Employsure, we have 4 fundamental pillars that we offer our clients. First one being compliance. With or without COVID-19, as I said, you know, we help identify any gaps that you may have in documentation. There's a lot of employers that have started from scratch and grown rapidly or grown over time and found it challenging to navigate through the Fair Work compliance, whether it's be from employee agreements, from casuals to the casual conversions, contractor agreements and so forth, employee handbooks, and all of those policies and procedures that are so important to have documented and in writing. You guys there, Anita and Adrian, would have seen how we do those.
Yeah, totally. It's fantastic. And as I was saying earlier, you keep them up to date as well. You know, it's not just a one-off process.
No.
We just keep on updating them as we need to.
Yeah, and as the businesses change or their businesses develop, if more policies and procedures need to be added or things needed to be adjusted, that's exactly what we're there for. So whether it's changes of awards and award interpretation, we've got an amazing team of wage consultants that can make sure that you're paying correctly under the right award, ensuring that you're not at risk of any of those underpayment issues that come up that we've seen a lot in the news prior to all of this. But compliance is a major thing, both on employment relations and workplace health and safety. Our second pillar being advice. As I said before, we have an amazing team of advisors. They work 24/7, whether it's 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning and you wake up stressed about something that's happened during the week and you've forgotten how to, you know, that you haven't reached out, you can call us at 2 o'clock in the morning. Our team are on the phone. We create the paper trails and the documentation to ensure that you're protected every step of the way.
Yeah,
so,
I was with you totally there when we were going through the prickly situations. And even now, before we do anything, we consult you. You guys prepare the paperwork for us.
Yeah.
Or if we're going to do something, you know, we run it by you. So we know categorically, because I know one of the really important things there is that we do, as you say, like you guide us and we do that. And you really do work as a team. And we have been challenged on everything that we've done in a couple of situations. And it has been, you know, you guys have just been amazing and flawless there.
Yeah. That's fantastic feedback. Thank you, Anita. But you're absolutely right. We insist that our clients ring us, whether it's the smallest issue or they think it's the smallest issue. Nothing's too small for us and nothing's too big. So it could be as little as someone not turning up for work 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late for 3 or 4 days. You know, anything from that scale all the way up to redundancies, or we really want to be on the forefront with you and guiding you through that. And what that does is it helps mitigate any risk or liability that may come up from running your business in regards to employment relations and workplace health and safety. The fourth pillar is our representation. So, you know, we can navigate through all of this with the compliance documents and the advice. And, you know, there are employees out there that will still go down that route of fair work or workplace health and safety. And again, we've got a partner, Employsure Law, that partners with your business and will represent you, whether it's through mediation, the court process, the legal handling. So you no longer have to pick up the phone and ring a solicitor and it's tick, tick, tick with the dollars, as we all know with solicitors, and all due respect to solicitors, but it's all encompassing in our service. And because we've helped you along the way and we've created that paper trail and that audit trail, our team are the best people to walk alongside you and guide you through that process.
Yep.
It's no additional cost. If you have to go down that legal route, there's no ongoing cost for every phone call or every email. It's all encompassing in our services, and we absolutely back what we say. So if you're following our advice and we're guiding you through it, then we're going to keep guiding you through it all the way through to the end.
Agreed. Been there, done that, and certainly did.
It's an extremely stressful process to go through for any employer in any industry. So rest assured that Employsure will take that journey with you, and we will fight the fight. The legal protection side of things, that comes down to if there is any fees or costs in regards to the legal side of things, then we also protect you financially. So we stand by what we do. We financially protect you and legally protect you along that journey.
Yeah, comforting to have, but fortunately we didn't need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice that you can have that peace of mind and sleep knowing that you've got a partner in your pocket looking after your best interests and fighting for you, without having to get a second opinion or third opinion or bringing in all different specialists. We have the team that will support you along that way.
Agreed.
I think the next slide just goes through, if you can click on that, Adrian. So
do you want to skip over this a little bit and get
is that let Leanne go?
Okay, I'll let you. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I can briefly skim over this. The next two slides talk about employment management as well as workplace health and safety. And these will show you, we offer you that expert advice anytime, anywhere. Make sure you're protected in regards to the Fair Work Act and your obligations. And modern awards and understanding the rates of pay, as I said before, underpayments are a huge thing. I had some clients ring me today saying that they've reduced people's pays and that they're doing this and they're doing that because of the crisis they're going through without following the necessary procedures and required procedures. So we want to make sure that, particularly during this time, but any other time without COVID-19, that you're following the right protocol and you're not opening yourself up to any liabilities.
Yeah.
The next slide talks about workplace health and safety. Again, what we do covers both facets of that business. So we're specialists in both fields.
And that would be an interesting time at the moment because a lot of our workplaces have actually changed.
Yes.
And we're not in our normal work environment. A lot of us, like you guys, are in our home offices.
Yeah, absolutely. And that working from home and making sure that you have those right policies in place to cover you with your team members working from home. It is a completely new landscape that most businesses are working through, and such an important part to keep across.
I know, Leanne, I spoke to you the other day that we actually got like a questionnaire to fill in for our client, our employees, to make sure that their home environment was safe. It was, I think you called it a risk assessment. I believe you're happy for us to share that with our clients. Is it also available on your website?
On our website, I'd have to double check with that for you, Anita. I know it's something that we do send out with our clients. Al, I'm not sure if you're across that. But we do have a huge amount of resources available on our website and different downloadable documents for employers that may not be part of our membership base that help navigate different questions that they have as well.
But I know you said you're happy for me to send that one out to our clients and make sure that they can do that risk assessment so they're sort of covered from that OH&S.
Yeah, it's really important that they cover that side of things. And again, because it's a ever-changing landscape, to have everything documented, there's nothing more important at this time.
Yeah.
Again, compliance, I've gone over that in regards to workplace processes. Our advice, as I said, 24/7, 7 days a week, anything unexpected. Our representation, we absolutely have your back. There's no time that you'll be left wondering. And our protection, we protect your businesses when in any sort of financial burden of the claim or any challenges that you have with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Al. He's an absolute genius in regards to Employsure, and open it up for question and answers.
Okay.
Thanks, Leanne. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for attending. I see that there are a few people that are a little bit eager to ask questions, and I know that they've taken their time out. So look, those people that are missing family dinners and are spending time away from their loved ones, thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon. Look, what I wanted to do is I will open the floor for some question and answers. What I wanted to do is, I suppose, give you a bit of an overview as to what's sort of happening with, I suppose, the coronavirus aspect, and what, as employers, you should probably be considering and things that you should have in place. So I'm going to spend 15 or 20 minutes, if that's okay with yourself, to be able to do that. And I think that's sort of going to probably answer a few questions, but it will open the window a little bit further for more questions. So let me start, I suppose, with coronavirus as an overview. Look, you know, as we all well know, the coronavirus has been or was made a pandemic. You know, the Australian government has taken action to, I suppose, monitor and respond to that outbreak in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus in Australia. So essentially what's happened is, you know, there's a lot of businesses that have been directed, a lot of non-essential businesses, sorry, and services that have been directed to shut down. So we're sort of talking about clubs, hotels, pubs, entertainment venues, restaurants and cafes. Look, you know, I suppose what's happened is that it's sort of impacted economically across a number of different sectors. And, you know, the government is trying to obviously maintain and encourage employers to keep their employees gainfully employed. So that's where the likes of this JobKeeper stimulus has come in, which I'm going to talk to you about in a very, very quick second. You know, it's also making a lot of changes and not only to employees' lives, to employers' life, it's also leading to a lot of unsuredness as well and a lot of stress. So, you know, it's a really, really challenging time for you all, and I can only but empathise. I suppose what I'm going to talk to you about now is to things that you as employers need to consider, as well as things that you need to, I suppose, take a very open and I suppose pragmatic approach to, if anything. So let's sort of jump onto the coronavirus JobKeeper package. So essentially the federal government, as you all well know, is currently offering a $130 billion wage subsidy to employers to help them pay their workers during this pandemic. One thing I want to stress to you this afternoon or this evening, depending on where in the country you are, is that it's still not law. We're currently sitting at a policy level. So essentially what needs to happen is for this policy to go to the next stage and for employers to actually be able to access the funding and receive the funding, it needs to go from policy through to legislation. So what I would say to you is that yes, you can jump onto the ATO website and you can register to access the JobKeeper stimulus package.
Yeah.
So
just to bring you up to speed, last night we had a great big session on JobKeeper in respect to like the available fees
and how it works and what you get and the sort of went through a lot of the tick the box items for people to get a general idea of how it rolls out. So we might pass that if we can.
Okay. That's fine.
There's more the questions of logistics, and I don't know whether you know any more than what we do, but I mean, going through my head last night was the fact that, you know, you've got to prove that your business has gone down 30%.
Yep.
Have you got any idea whether that's in 1 month and then it's going to keep on going for all the other months?
Yeah, so essentially what it is from the limited from the limited information that we've been provided, it's essentially for businesses that that have an annual turnover of less than $1 billion. And it's a business who self-assess that they have seen a reduction of 30% or more since the 1st of March 2020 over a minimum 1 month period.
So it doesn't matter when that occurs, is what I'm saying. Because when we were talking last night, a lot of people were okay for the first 2 or 3 weeks of March, right?
Yeah.
But then come that last week of March, they've had to close. So if you looked at just, you know, just their income just for that one, it probably might not, over a month, it might not have reduced 30%, but next month it's definitely going to.
Again, I think the caveat is there that it says a minimum of 1 month. So there's a bit of a grey area. It would be fair to say that, you know, this legislation probably won't pass into law probably until mid-April, probably towards the end of April. So I would say the onus is on the employer to obviously register that interest and then qualify for that period. So they may be able to gainfully show that the first 2 or 3 weeks of March, they were sustainable, but from the last week of March through to the last week of April, that they've demonstrated they've lost that 30%. So look, it's until such times, and I've been saying this to a lot of our clients today, until such times as we actually have the legislation and the law sitting at the table, I can't really tell you. As you well know, when things go from policy, when it's announced initially, and then it goes through the Senate, and then it goes through the upper and lower houses, things get tacked on, you know, in order to get it through the Senate, to get it through those stages, people lobby. So, you know, all sorts of weird and wonderful things could come out of this. And a lot of the things that have been touted as what or where businesses currently are may be different in a month's time. So I think we just have to register that interest and then, you know, go through the process once we've actually got some further clarity. And I don't think I could answer it any better than that.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. It's just whether you had a better understanding than me. And I was reading some stuff that you sent out today, which is fantastic information. But what I'm sort of getting is that we as employers have to pay, obviously, these wages, and we're going to get refunded and reimbursed. And it's a bit tricky to sort of, we're obviously not going to want to jump in now if it's not going to be gazetted and all the rest of it potentially till mid this month, you know, end of this month. And then the refunds start coming. It's sort of like, for me, potentially thinking that the employees are, you're better off not to be putting your employees back on until we have a clearer picture, especially if we're going to be, as employers, we're going to be funding it up front.
How do you see all that? Because that was an interesting dilemma that Nita and I were chatting about today, about obviously the way the rules, no, they're not law, but superficially, you've got to fund the wages and then get them back later on. That seems to be the process that they want you to follow. Is that any different? Can you shed any light? I know it's not law, but is that how you think this seems to be going, that you fund and then get back, fund and then get back, fund and then get back a month in arrears?
Yeah, look, there's no clear indication at this stage, Adrian. So I would be uncomfortable in saying what I believe or may happen. I think that what we need to do as employers is just sit there and wait and see. Look, essentially what I wanted to talk to you about is that stand down aspect. So moving on from the JobKeeper aspect.
Yep, that's fine.
If we're in a situation where you have been directed by the government to shut your business down and stand your employees down, then you're entitled to put those employees on a leave without pay. However, if you're in the other situation where you haven't been directed by the government to shut your business or to close your business down, you can't put your employees on, or you can stand them down of your own free will, but you need to understand you have to pay them. So
really
really careful. You can't just make a decision to shut your business down because you've seen a downturn in business. It's a really difficult situation to be in. What I'm trying to get across is that if you've been directed, so in order to access what we call Section 524 and 525 of the Fair Work Act, you have the stand down period is out of, or the reason why your business is closing down is out of your hands. So you're not responsible for it.
Okay. So in this scenario, we've got a lot of dentists, and obviously the government has come in and said you can only do emergency work. So their business has dropped down to basically, emergency work.
Virtually nothing, right? It's virtually non-existent.
So they would be deemed to have been stood down. Asked to close down.
Yeah, they were having, and this is the issue that a lot of hairdressers and barbers took exception to, whereas they sort of said you can only be in the chair for half an hour and you have to have a 2.5 square metre or a 4 square metre social distancing period. So, these people came back and said, well, we can't really do that. You're telling us that we can't do a job. We want to stand our employees down. Essentially what happened is the government came back and said, well, no, you're still operating in your business, so you can't stand your employees down. We haven't directed you to shut your business down. We've given you some clearer expectations with you. So it's really, to be honest with you, it's a real grey area. Yes, your business, it's again that sort of essential services aspect. The argument from the government could be, well, yes, we've told you that you can't undertake general practitioner or general dentistry, but you're still open and you can still practice to take care of that emergency surgery. It's really unclear. So there may be argument to say, well, we are open, but we're only doing 1 or 2 jobs a week, whereas we would normally trade and have 60 to 70 jobs a week. It's a really, really unclear aspect, and it's a real challenge for a lot of employers at the moment. So I think that if you wanted to apply that stand down process, if you are a member of Employsure, do give the advice team a call and talk to us about what you want to do. If you're not, what I would suggest you do is you jump on, if you can access the Fair Work Act, have a look at section 524 and 525 and see if you can interpret that. If you've got industry body relationships, or you've got somebody that might be able to give you some advice and some guidance, it's something that you really need to sort of look into, because there are some additional things with that stand down period that you need to be aware of. So even if the government has told you to shut your business down, and you have you've stood your employees down and on leave without pay, you also need to understand that even though they're on leave without pay, their entitlements still accrue because technically they're still at work. The other thing is that you need to be very careful of is that if those employees were typically to work a Saturday or a Sunday, a public holiday, so Good Friday, Easter Monday, they're all public holidays, you still, by law, you have to pay your employees for those public.
Wow. So even if they're stood down, you still have to pay public holidays? Most
definitely you do, yes. So these are a lot of things that employers just aren't clear on. And a lot of people are sort of going, well, we don't really know. There's no clarity. There's no direction. I can assure you that, there are business, Fair Work is currently, as we speak, actually reviewing 103 different modern awards, and they're actually looking at introducing what we call pandemic leave.
Wow.
Into the industrial instrument. So essentially what that means is that in time, what will happen is there will be a situation where you're going to that an employer is going to be able to turn around and say, well, you know what, we're going to put you on pandemic leave. So essentially what that means is that the businesses will be able to actually direct their employees to take 2 weeks unpaid pandemic leave, which more or less means an employee can take this leave when they are required by the government or a doctor to self-isolate. They must be given, and they must give notice, so that employee must give that notice, and the leave will be counted as service for the purposes of entitlements. So there are things that are being worked towards. There's a lot of movement in government, and it's changing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell us about it.
We feel your pain there.
The amount of, we've had so many webinars on all the moving parts, and we're still going.
Yeah, right. Most definitely. Look, one thing I do want to talk about is that, there are a lot of those questions, and I want to field as many as I can. One thing I do want to focus on is there's that workplace health and safety aspect that a lot of businesses are falling down on as well. So I just want to quickly talk to you
sure.
that. So, you know, what's really important. So some of the specifics that as a business that you need to be attuned to is the fact that you need to make sure that you've got policies and procedures in place. So from a workplace health and safety perspective, there's no such thing as common sense anymore. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you've got workplace health and safety policies and procedures, and you're communicating and consulting with your workforce around what those policies and procedures are in relation to the coronavirus, in relation to infection control. And I know a lot of you are saying to me, well, you know, we're a business, you know, we're not a health provider. We don't need to worry about infection control. Well, the unfortunate thing is well, yes, you do. There's a lot of businesses that are actually going and teaching their staff on how to wash their hands properly. There's businesses that are out there teaching their staff how to cough and how to cover their cough properly. You know, they're talking about social distancing. You know, they're getting their businesses, or businesses are undertaking risk assessments to identify the risks and consider what steps will be required to, you know, to mitigate or stop the likelihood of spread of a disease or COVID-19 within their businesses. These are all things that businesses need to be attuned to as well, because a lot of the states and the territories have updated their workplace health and safety laws. If you were to be found negligible, or an employer was to be found negligible, and they've allowed an incident or a serious injury within a workplace, the fines can be upwards of $10 million per instance, and the jail time can be upwards of 20 years. So they've introduced an industrial manslaughter law. So I need to appeal to you that as much as I possibly can is to really sort of focus on those workplace health and safety specifics. You know, if you're not sure, again, talk to your local state health department about what you must do, and identify what sort of mitigating circumstances or things that you can put in place to sort of reduce the likelihood of somebody getting sick within the workplace. And some of those things are what employers are doing at the moment, and that's getting people to work from home. So I'm currently in my 7-year-old daughter's bedroom at the moment with my offices, because, you know, that's the times we sort of live in. One thing I want to sort of talk to you about from that working from home perspective as well is, with working from home, you need to make sure that you set clear expectations with your employees. So earlier you sort of mentioned about doing that workplace health and safety checklist. You need to understand as employers that when you ask your employee to work from home, it's no longer their home, it is their home and their workplace. And if an employee was to hurt themselves in their home, and they were to take that matter further, it could be considered that you haven't allowed for a safe workplace. So that checklist is something that you all reasonably need to be able to go through and set expectations and identify if there are risks within that workplace, that you put mitigating circumstances in place to reduce the likelihood of an incident. So there's another really important aspect that I really want to appeal to you about today, and that's the mental health aspects as well.
Yeah.
It's a very unsure time for a lot of employees. There's a lot of stress out there. There's a lot of worry. People aren't sleeping right. You know, there's a lot of loneliness and isolation out there, because people do live by themselves and they do handle stressful situations differently. So as employers, I want to appeal to you and sort of get you to maybe sort of think about ways to mitigate the likelihood of someone becoming depressed or distressed because they're working from home, because they're feeling lonely. What we're doing at Employsure is we do regular team catch-ups. So we do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. We're having sort of fun little sessions where our state manager is sending us challenges to sort of decipher codes and sort of giving some sort of reward. Today, it was a free Uber lunch, basically, and we had to go through a whole lot of GIFs and sort of decipher them and identify what they're saying. And constant communication is also really, really key as well. So if there are changes that are sort of coming up from the government and it affects your employees, you should be communicating with them about that. you know, if you need to get them to say that they've read and understood those sort of things, circulating those memos, that communication and that consultation from a workplace health and safety perspective is really, really key. So look, you know, from that perspective, I suppose some of the questions, some of the typical questions I'm getting from an HR perspective.
Yeah, that's what we're really interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, which is where we are today. Some of the HR questions are as, hey, Elle, I've got an employee who has made it very clear that they don't want to be coming into work because they're scared of getting sick, or they have low immunity at the moment, or they're taking cancer treatment, whatever it may be. What I would say to you is, if your employee comes to you and says to you, I don't want to attend the workplace, you know, understand why. So if such a request is made, consider what will work for your business, essentially. So an employee can't simply just refuse to attend the workplace. You can more or less sort of talk to them about, you know, what your expectations are. You can sort of say to them, look, you know, we are quite happy to make an arrangement with you. But if the employee turns around to you and just says to you, I'm not coming at all, I don't want to come in, what you can do is you can start talking to them about maybe accessing leave. So things that would be considered in the best interest of the business. I'm not talking about personal leave. I'm talking about allowing your employees to access that annual leave entitlement, that long service leave entitlement. I want to stress a lot to you now that the only time that you should really be allowing your employee to access their paid personal leave, and look, that's purely a business decision, is normally when the employee provides you with a medical certificate to look after because they themselves are unwell, or they're providing care and support to an immediate family member. So an immediate family member is husband, wife, daughter, son, de facto partner, grandparents, you know, the people that you live with on a day-to-day basis.
Just a question there, Al. What about if they do have to self-isolate it? So it is like a medical...
If they've come in touch with someone who's got it or might have had it or has travelled overseas and they've been pretty much told you've got to self-isolate for 14 days. Would that be
deemed a medical reason?
Pardon me?
Would that be deemed a medical reason?
Look, it really depends. What I'd say to you is if the employee has been directed by the employer to travel, and they go out of state for argument's sakes and they come back into state because that's a part of their job or it's an essential service and they have contracted it or they have to go into that quarantine, the employer, because they've directed the employee to do it under section 525, I think, they are actually required to continue paying that employee through that isolation period. On the other hand, if an employee has gone overseas or jumped on a cruise ship and they've come back and, you know, they've been told to self-isolate, you don't have to pay them.
But what about if they've come in contact with, unknowingly with that person that's been on a cruise? They haven't themselves, like, deliberately, you know, in a week or so ago where we weren't in this sort of more stringent stage 3, and they've come into contact with that person, so now they've had to go into isolation.
Yeah, and that would be unpaid because it's out of their hands.
Yep.
You know, I think what you need to do is take it on a case-by-case basis. One thing that's really important, if an employee turns up to work and they are unfit for work, you know, deal with that matter accordingly. Essentially, what you would be doing is saying to the employee, hey, look, I believe you're unfit for work. What I'm thinking that we might need to do is we may need to contact your emergency point of contact, and we're going to get them to pick you up and take you home, or they're going to take you to, you know, a medical service of some description. Don't let your employees hop back in their car and drive. Because if they have an accident, it's potentially still a part of the workplace, and you've directed them to do that. So it potentially could, you know, make it a little bit more challenging as well. So just be really careful on sort of how you manage those sort of situations. Are there any other sort of questions? I mean, there's so many different things I can come.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the ones we've got, obviously, after the JobKeeper, everyone's like, if they've got casuals that haven't been on that long and they really would like to move them to permanent, how would that, you know, how would that be perceived?
Is there a way of tiptoeing through that? Because you know what, as a lot of people do, they put people on casuals because they're not sure yet whether the demand's going to be there for the consistency of work and all that sort of stuff. But if in due course it shows that that demand is there any scope to move them to part-time and do it within all the rules that we're hypothetically looking at?
Look, great question. Let's talk about casuals for a quick minute. There's two types of casuals in the world at the moment. The first is what we would call a true casual. So a true casual is somebody that's engaged on an hour-by-hour basis. They don't have they don't work guaranteed hours. They work unsystematically, and there's no ongoing promise of ongoing work. So if we've got Al works for a supermarket and, you know, he's packing shelves and we engage him on a casual basis, and he's been doing that for 2 or 3 weeks and he's been working those sporadic hours, and we sort of say, well, you know, Al's not really good at his job, or we don't need Al anymore, we can turn around and say to Al, give him an hour's notice and say, look, we don't need you anymore, see you later. On the other hand, with a casual that has what we would call regular and consistent hours of work, or regular and systematic hours of work, if Al's been working for a 6 or a 12-month period, depending on the industrial instrument or the modern award that they're covered by, they may have the same rights as a full-time or a permanent part-time employee. To give you an example, we'll use Al again. Al's been working in the supermarket packing shelves for a 12-month period. He's been working 25 hours a week. He works different days, but he still works those 25 hours a week. You know, you could go to Al and say to Al, look, you know, are you going to be working next week? Al would likely turn around and say, yes, I'm going to be working 25 hours because I've got a pattern of work and I've been doing that for the last 12-month period. In that instance, that casual employee is not really a casual employee. They, as I said, can access the rights of a permanent part-time or a full-time employee. One thing I would suggest you do is, if you have got those employees that are actually casual, but they have regular and consistent pattern of work, if you had to change their working hours, you would have to probably undertake a consultation period with them.
Yeah.
You would also probably be in a situation, if you needed to reduce their hours or remove them from your business because you don't need that work done anymore, you would likely have to undertake a redundancy process.
Yeah.
So, but on that, just one step further.
Yeah.
If the industrial award and all the paperwork stacks up from moving them across.
So converting them, do you mean?
Yes. I know we don't know the rules yet, right? Because, but under just the generic way these JobKeeper rules seem to have been written, would that then mean that from the day they become a permanent part-timer that then they're possibly eligible?
It's a really, you know, it's a question that I can't answer, unfortunately, because we just don't know what sort of idiosyncrasies or what sort of terms and conditions they're going to put into the law and legislation. I would probably say that in most instances, for most employers, they would be probably okay from that perspective, because a lot of the modern, the industrial instruments set an expectation that casual conversion or an employee can access the casual conversion after 12 months, not 6. There are some industrial instruments, a lot of the trade-based industrial instruments, building and construction general on-site award, manufacturing and associated industries and occupations, the vehicle manufacturing award, building and the electrical, electronics and communicating contracting award, plumbing and fire sprinklers award. They do set an expectation of 6 months to casually convert. But the really great thing about the industrial instruments is they set some very clear expectations that the business doesn't have to. There may be grounds to reasonably refuse the request for an employee to convert. And I think that's something that they would be able to probably leverage off if that employee was able to do that. One thing I would say to you is that the caveat with that JobKeeper stimulus is that casuals that have been engaged with the business for more than 12 months will be entitled to access the stimulus package. People that haven't been, or casual employees that haven't been engaged or have been engaged as casual employees less than 12 months may not be able to access that stimulus. So again, we need that clarity before we can sort of start making real commitments as to where things are going to be going when it comes to that casual aspect and how that's sort of going to map itself out. But
sorry,
no, carry on.
What I was going to say is I've got some questions here, but before I ask these specific questions, I wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you've been hit up consistently for just general questions that might be worth bringing up here now, or have you covered most of the things you're getting hammered with, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, the things that we're getting hammered with is that stand down, the job keeper, and the other aspect is redundancy. So let's talk about redundancy. I mean, I've got all evening to talk to you guys about it. Redundancies are questions that we're fielding on a day-to-day basis. I would say probably at the moment, just roughly from my experience in dealing, I'd say probably out of the 30 to 40 calls I'm personally fielding a day, I would probably say 30 to 40% of those are questions about what is redundancy, how do I go through redundancy, and how do I undertake the process. So one thing I want to say to you is with redundancy, you have to ensure that it's genuine. All right, so we can't just say, look, you know, we've got Al's a poor performer. You know, everybody's really quiet at the moment. This is the time to make Al redundant because we're having performance issues with Alan. What I would say to you is that you need to be able to justify that redundancy aspect is actually genuine. So you need to be able to demonstrate there has been a genuine downturn in your business, or you don't necessarily need that job to be done anymore. You know, you need to be able to have a business case or put something in place that if you're challenged by an ombudsman, a commissioner, or a presiding judge, that you can turn around and say, we didn't terminate Alan because of the performance issues. We made Alan redundant because we undertook a redundancy process. And before we actually went to actually making Alan redundant, we actually went through a business case. We tried to avoid it as much as possible. So I can't stress to your clients enough that you need to make sure that redundancy process is genuine, that you've undertaken a business case and you can justify your decision to proceed with the redundancy process. Okay.
Yeah, and no, I've got a couple more questions myself.
No, ask these ones for.
Okay, I'll ask some questions. So one question is, and I'll read it to you, in the building industry, can you classify a subcontractor as a casual based on your comments description of a casual? In other words, no commitment to hours and entitlements, and still get the JobKeeper entitlement?
Look, independent contractors are you have to be really careful on how you manage what an independent contractor is. The easiest way, if I was to put it in that context as a builder, if I was to come to you, Adrian, and say, Adrian, I want you to build me a house. That house has to have 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, 2-car garage and a swimming pool out the back. And I was to say to you, I'm going to give you a sum of money. I want you to go and build that. I don't get involved in how that house is built or what you do. I just want to see a final product. That's what we call an independent contractor. On the other hand, if I was to say to you, Adrian, I want you to go and build all of that thing, all that house for me, but you start at 6 o'clock in the morning, you finish at 2 o'clock, you use my tools and equipment, you wear my uniform, I'll take care of your insurances. I'm going to hold you responsible for your performance. And I'm going to more or less have oversight on how you operate that project. That would infer what we would call an employer-employee relationship. What I would say to your clients is that if they've got independent contractors, they need to be treated as independent contractors. If they can't sort of meet that expectation of there's a job, go away and do it, they leave themselves at risk. The risk is there that if they have that employee turn around and say, well, hang on a second, you told me I was a casual employee, all of us, or even a full-time or a permanent part-time employee, they could potentially turn around and then say, well, you know, you owe me holiday pay, you owe superannuation, you know, you have to give me confirmed or guaranteed hours of work because I believe I was a full-time employee. I'd probably say to that client specifically, be very, very careful on how you manage that process. And if they're an independent contractor, i.e. going through an ABN, that's a business relationship. If, on the other hand, they are a true employee and they're covered by the PAYG laws, treat them as such. And then if, depending on what the criteria is, once the JobKeeper package has been passed into law, then look at it and then make a reasonable discussion. But I would be saying to that client that they would need to talk to their accountant, and they would also need to talk to somebody from the HR industry, such as an Employsure or somebody else, as to better understand what the risks are if they were to do something that would be seen as being unlawful. One thing that I would say to you is with the sham contracting relationship, the maximum fine a business can face is up to $63,800 fine for disguising a independent contract or disguising an employer-employee relationship as an independent contracting arrangement.
And I'll add to that too, Al, just from an ATO point of view, that I know that the tax office are getting all over these contractor employee rules and are really starting to hit it really hard. And I would argue you've got to be super careful that you tick the box carefully, because if you try and, you know, back in the good old days a few years ago where people were told, no, you're only a subby, you give me an ABN and you come and work and I get around work cover and super and all this sort of stuff, right, which is the good old days. Those days are gone, and the ATO are sniffing this stuff. They know there's blood in the water and they're coming for it. Yeah. I would argue that what you said is directly supported by the ATO view as well. And the downside, if you do the wrong things here, you have to back pay annual leave, super, you'll pay penalties. You know, you've got to get the advice done right at the start and do it properly. It's just not worth it.
Could outweigh totally any JobKeeper payments.
Oh, absolutely.
And look, the other thing is what I'd say to you in that instance is there were a lot of employers that do engage independent contractors. Where they fall down is they only listen to the ATO. They do tend to forget about the Fair Work Act and the Fair Work legislation. Yes. So again, I would be appealing to your clients to say to them, do take into consideration the ATO aspect, but also make sure that you're intrinsically aware of the expectations set under Fair Work, because you do have to remember they're government departments and they do talk. So if the ATO finds something that you're not doing right, they may, worst case scenario, go and report that to Fair Work, and then all of a sudden you've got a Fair Work inspector standing on your doorstep wanting to audit your business. And that could just exacerbate something that's already a very, very difficult sort of situation.
And in our experience and what we've seen with ourselves and clients, it's not really that hard for someone to dob you into Fair Work these days either. And there's not much obligation or dollars. And I'll tell you now, and you probably may not like me saying this, but at the end of the day, everything seems to be in favour of the person bringing the claim. So you've got to prove everything else to get around all that, right?
Yeah, look, essentially the onus of proof is on the employer to demonstrate whatever the employee is saying never happened. So if you do have somebody that's an independent contractor that can actually turn around and say, well, I am directed, I am forced to wear their uniform, they do performance manage me, they tell me what time to start, what time to finish. Unfortunately, it doesn't bode too well for those people that don't have any evidence to substantiate anything otherwise.
Now, I've got a few more questions. I'll go through them one at a time. This is a long question, so I'll try and break it down. Okay. Right. If a person is employed regularly as a casual during the 6-month, JobKeeper thing, and at the end of the subsidised period claim that the regularity of their hours might mean they meet the criteria for permanent part-time status, how can we ensure that we retain the ability to manage the structure of the workforce at the end of this program?
As I sort of said to you before, Adrian, unfortunately, there's no clear answer to that. I think that the reason why they've put that 12-month caveat into their initial announcement when Prime Minister Morrison announced the stimulus package, it's probably fair to say that those employees that are casual that have been working for that 12-month period, it would probably be arguable to say that in most circumstances they would have that regular and systematic hours of work. So they're already entitled to, request that. One thing you have to be very aware of under the modern awards, again, depending on the individual modern award that you're operating under, I'll use the General Retail Industry Award as an example. the casual conversion expectation that is set out in the General Retail Industry Award stipulates the employee has the right to approach the employer. Whereas if we get the Building and Construction General On-Site Award, the employer has the responsibility to offer permanent part-time or full-time hours within a 6-month period, and they're required to do that. So the difference is that, you know, if they are in an industry that sort of sets an expectation where they have to give 12 months, at 12 months, the employee can request. It's up to the employee to go and request that from the employer. The employer is not obligated to offer that to the employee. As I said to you, the industrial instruments or the modern awards that a majority of your clients are probably covered by also have reasonable provisions which can actually demonstrate they can reasonably refuse the request. And I think in this instance, because it's a stimulus package, there would be enough coverage to enforce the reasonable refusal of that casual conversion based on what's happening in today's environment.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And look, another thing someone's brought up since that initial question was the other thing that people have got to balance out, which based on what you've already covered, is casual, given the unknown, very much unknown world we live in and run our business in at the moment, we're likely to have 6 months minimum of extremely uncertain and conditions that we're all going to be living and working in. What you've got to be careful of is obviously converting casuals to part-timers, because once they're part-timers as well, they get, you know, rights that full-timers get on a pro rata basis, hence, you know, annual leave, sick leave, unfair dismissal, you know, it brings in a whole other host of measures that you've got to tick the box more on, you know, too. I think that's a valid point.
Most definitely. But as I sort of said to you before, Adrian, as well as you have to remember that those employees that have been working regular and consistent hours of work as a casual, and they have been doing that for a 6 or a 12-month period, based on the industrial instrument or the modern award they're covered by, they still have the same rights as a permanent part-time or full-time employee anyway.
Okay.
You have to be very...
rights, but not the same entitlements. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. They have the same rights, but just because they've been working as a casual employee, it doesn't mean they get paid their 25% and then they can accrue the leave. What I'm talking about is if the employee was to be dismissed or, you know, there was to be a change in those hours, that they have the same rights or the similar rights as what a full-time or a permanent part-time employee is entitled to. And that is a consultation process. Or if we were to reduce those hours or say we don't need that job to be done anymore, that casual employee after that 12-month period could and is entitled to actually go through a redundancy type process to actually have them removed from the business. So the point here is that if you've got casual employees and you've got the ability to do it, treat them as proper casual employees. Talk to them about saying you are a casual employee, we're going to engage you on an hour-by-hour basis. We aren't going to give you guaranteed hours of work, and you're going to be working on an unsystematically hour basis. The other thing I would say to you is where the responsibility sits with the employer is to actually track what their casual employees are doing. So what I mean from that is maybe every quarter you should be talking to your clients about if you do have casual employees and you can start seeing a pattern of work form, start doing some workforce planning and seeing whether or not there's enough of an argument to actually give these people or offer these employees permanent or full-time hours.
We do that within our workplace because we've got uni students, but they choose to stay casual because it allows them the flexibility to change their days from semester to semester.
And that's fine. What you need to do again is it's about having the right information. So even if you offer that to your casual and they turn around and say, I'm not interested in doing that, you need to formalize that. And those are expectations that are set in the industrial instrument. So what I would be saying to you is if that employee turned around and said, I don't want to take that casual, I don't want to take permanent part-time or full-time work, we need to be able to give them a letter to say that we've offered it and they've refused it and they've signed it to say they've refused it. Then we put that in their employee file. And if anything ever comes up or they say, well, I was never offered casual conversion, or, you know, I wasn't given the opportunity to actually access casual conversion. And you can say, well, as a matter of fact, we did, and here's the evidence to substantiate it. You've got that proof. So remember what I said to you at the very start, the onus of proof is whatever the employee is saying never happened. So the onus of proof is on the employer to pull that document out to say, well, as a matter of fact, we actually did have a conversation. And here it is.
Next question. Given the JobKeeper legislation and how unknown it is at the moment, should we be instructing our staff to claim settlement entitlements in the interim and hopefully switch them over to JobKeeper after it becomes law?
I felt that too.
That's a real curly one.
It is. Unfortunately, you might sort of think I'm sitting on a fence, and a very sharp one at that. But look, we're getting clients actually ringing us up and asking those questions. As I've sort of said to them, you know, we're answering the unanswerable, I suppose, in this instance, because there's no clarity around how or what the fine print of the JobKeeper stimulus is about. One thing I would say is, with the likes of standing your employees down or providing them with notifications and saying to them, go to Centrelink, you need to understand with Centrelink is Centrelink's operated on a case-by-case basis. You know, Centrelink just doesn't say, well, you know, you've been made redundant, or you're out of a job. They go through their own selection criteria to make sure, you know, how much assets you have, what sort of house you own, all those other things. And based on some of their workings, those people that have good savings or they have high assets, they may not be able to access the funding. So I don't have a position, I'm sorry, as to what that is until such times as we've got more clarity on what the JobKeeper stimulus is and what I suppose the intricacies of that legislation is going to be.
No, okay, thank you. Next question. Sorry, go on.
Like, from what we were saying before, like with the way the redundancy, you know, if you're not directly told that your business is it's got to go shut down, I sort of feel like they're sort of pushing us to keep the employees, irrespective whether they want it or not, and then the job seeker is going to come into play and
hopefully hold their positions in, kind of deal.
Yeah, essentially that's what, from my understanding, and this is purely my understanding, Prime Minister Morrison was trying to get that point across, is that, you know, think of alternatives, think of other ways, diversify your business. You know, if you want to talk to your employees about reducing their hours instead of making them redundant, do that. But you can also, through the redundancy process is essentially there to alert the employee that the employee position is at risk. Another part of that redundancy process is to allow the employee to provide alternative suggestions. So this is what I think this is all sort of made for, is that they're saying, well, we're going to pay these people $1,500 a fortnight. Don't make them redundant. Talk to them about, you know, other things that they may want to do. That could be reducing those hours. It could be job sharing. It could be, you know, taking leave without pay for a certain amount of time. It could be accessing their entitlements until such times as this package comes available. I think what Prime Minister Morrison was trying to get at, whether or not it be right or wrong, is don't jump the gun and go straight to redundancy, because it's only going to affect, I suppose, the economic environment that we currently operate. And something that I have been sort of saying to a lot of our clients is, you need to sort of think outside the square a little bit. People are sort of looking into the now, not into the future. If you lose all of your staff and you get rid of all your staff and the coronavirus pandemic goes away, what does that mean for your business? You know, are you going to have all of this work, you know, come back, and you're not going to have the staff to facilitate the requirements that you need to provide to your employees? It's very easy for me to say that, because I don't run a business, I don't own a business, and I don't have the pressures and the overheads that a business owner does. But I think what they're trying to get across is, don't make your employees redundant. Try and get through this. The government is here to support you.
And that's what the JobKeeper is trying to do, obviously, is to try and keep more people employed and off the unemployment benefits and job seekers and all those sorts of things. Just as a side issue to that you've just been speaking about, is something that's gone through my mind, and I know it's not law, but just hypothetically HR, something that went through my mind is, and I used this example in a webinar last night, Joe Bloggs works for us and he's on $1,000 a fortnight, right? Part-time, permanent part-time. We get to qualify and he gets onto the $1,500 a week, a fortnight, which is another $500 a fortnight. From a HR point of view, are we going to be able to, within our rights, to say, well, we expect you to work 50% more hours and all that sort of stuff? Or because I've had these questions and I'm like, geez, I'm going to ask this tonight.
One thing that I'm sort of looking at the moment is there's something in here that I was reading before, is to say that under the scheme, every eligible employee must receive at least $1,500 a fortnight from their employer before tax.
Yep.
So essentially the way I interpret that is that every eligible employee must receive at least $1,500 per fortnight from their employer before tax. Does that mean that the employee has to earn at least $1,500 before they access this? Or does that mean that, you know, if Alan's working, you know, getting paid $1,000 a fortnight, as you said, does that mean he automatically gets $1,500 in his back pocket? So is he getting a pay increase? Again, there needs to be more clarity around what the interpretation is. What I would be saying to you from an HR perspective is that if, you know, that employee is getting this payment and you're asking them to work more hours than what they've been guaranteed, I think that would leave you vulnerable. And we also have to remember that the national employment standards still stand instead. So if the employee is getting paid $1,000 a fortnight and they're guaranteed 25 hours a week, I don't think it would be unreasonable to ask them to work 50% more of their hours to guarantee or to justify the $1,500 payment, because it's not coming from you, it's coming from the government.
So there's a chance under HR that this person's going to make a percentage of money on top to keep their job for doing no more than what they have been doing prior to that.
Again, I don't have a position. I think we need to we need to sort of wait and see what comes across in the legislation to maybe address that issue, because I'm sure that's something that is going to be discussed in Parliament.
And the other thing that's come up in the last 24, 48 hours with us is, and I don't think you're going to know the answer to this either, and we're going to have to sit back and wait, which is what I said, is they've seemed to allow one person, if you're self-employed sole trader, but those people who run businesses through trusts and companies who are effectively self-employed with no employees either seem to miss out on the rules. So it'd be interesting to see how they try and address that disparity between being a sole trader, self-employed sole trader versus a self-employed through a trust or a company. They don't seem to cater for that with the rules at the moment either. So I sit back and wait to see if that disparity gets cleared up.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, you're dead right. I think it's just going to be a sit back and wait and see sort of approach, unfortunately.
Now, next question I have, if we are giving our staff a work from home audit checklist, should it be based on an ad hoc or permanent work from home conditions?
It should always be temporary, because this is only going to be this is only a temporary situation. Essentially, I think what you would probably need to do is look at everything on a case-by-case basis. As I've sort of said in the past, if an employee is going to be working from home, for the entirety of the rest of their employment relationship, it should be more a permanent sort of situation. But a lot of employers, like mine, it's like Employsure has given me a screen, they've given me my laptop, they've given me a keyboard, a mouse pad, all of those sort of things. Essentially, that checklist is to go through and identify anything else the employee may be at risk of. So what needs to happen is it's the employer's responsibility that whilst the employee is working from home, that it's treated like the workplace, and that they're doing as much as reasonably practicable to ensure that the house or the working environment the employee is in is safe. And that's where the benefit of having that checklist is. So if an employee does have an accident in the workplace and they haven't identified that risk on that checklist, what is the employer meant to do? The employer is not going to sort of roll up to somebody's house and say, well, I'm here to do a workplace health and safety assessment, especially in where we currently sit at the moment.
Yeah, that's a fair call. Next question is, this is a really interesting one. What if you have a casual on the books who actually wants to try and get the JobKeeper supplement, but doesn't actually want to work for you in the next 6 months?
Find themselves in jail? I would say to any of your clients, keep well away from those sort of undertakings, because you will be found out. Yeah, if at the end of the day you want to profit from this situation, I think there's a lot of risks associated with it, and you have to understand that with doing those, with undertaking that sort of practice, there's going to be a consequence.
Yeah. The next question I've got here, if you do cut hours back, what is acceptable hours to be claimed the JobKeeper allowance? I think that's probably not a HR question. It's more so we can probably talk about that one-on-one, because I know who that person is. They're a client of ours. One thing I wanted to go back to, Al, was you mentioned before about the calls you're fielding at the moment on a day-to-day basis, and you said 30 to 40% of them are redundancies. Yeah. What would fill out the rest of the day in general terms with the rest of it? Is there some consistency in questions that we haven't covered yet?
No, not really. Redundancy, coronavirus, JobKeeper stimulus package is pretty much what the hot topics are at the moment.
Now, how, I know you won't know the answer to this, but I'm just verbalising. With how quick the other stimulus stuff got through Parliament, I would imagine they're going to try and push this really quickly through Parliament like the other stuff, because there's so many people trying to make decisions like you and I are conjecturing on and verbalising, what can we and can't we do, and we're waiting on for some of the nuances to be clarified. But I would have thought they'd really try and push this through like the other stimulus measures so people have more certainty in making decisions.
Yeah, it's only hearsay. I have heard through the grapevine that the Prime Minister has directed Parliament to reconvene early next week.
Yep.
To obviously pass this through and push this through so it can go into law. So look, again, how long is a piece of string? We know how the government can be, and sometimes the red tape sort of does clog the.
Yeah, but I think the difference between right now and 6 months ago is I think Liberal and Labor are actually talking about this before they bring it publicly, on the basis that I think they, from what I understand, are hypothetically agreeing to it and then publicise it with the media, then we all get our heads around it, and then I think they try and get it through Parliament. I think that's how they're trying to attack this, so they don't have this, fighting each other and, like they normally do.
It's probably fair to say there is some bipartisanship there. So again, I don't want to get into the if, buts and maybes on how the politicians work and how the different parties do, to be bluntly honest with you, because it's hard enough at the best of times to try and interpret how they think and what they were trying to achieve out of all of this. So look, the other thing I would sort of say to you is, the one that we're seeing a lot of questions of is, how do we reduce those hours? So you made a comment before, Adrian. What I would say to your clients today is, reducing hours for a temporary as a temporary measure is something that's probably a positive thing, and I would encourage them to consider doing that, especially if they are seeing that 20 to 30% downturn. It's okay to go and talk to your employees at an informal level and say to them, look, this is where our business is currently at. We are being affected. In order to ensure the viability of our business, what we want to do is talk to you about maybe looking at reducing your work hours on a temporary basis. Is that something you'd be interested? Remember that consultation aspect. Remember that 98% of your employees are probably going to be really happy to help you out. I do understand that there are 2% of those employees that are probably going to make your life miserable, and I do apologise, and that's where your policies and procedures are going to come in and try and protect you. But go back to those 98% of fantastic employees that are probably going to say, hey, look, yeah, we are happy to take a bit of a back seat, or we're happy to take a reduction in hours. Remember that some of those employees also have the ability to access their annual leave and long service leave. So when you are talking about reducing their hours, you might say, hey, look, you are a full-time employee. We're looking at reducing your hours to 3 days a week. You do have some leave entitlements available. Would you like, we're quite happy to offer you to access that annual leave to top up your salary or your hourly rate. Sorry, not your hourly rate, your weekly hours to sort of maintain where you currently are at the moment. Once that's exhausted, we'll obviously have to look into things, but have that consultation, talk to your employees. We're all human and we're all very understanding. It's a very stressful time. It is a very hard time for a lot of businesses. So, you know, don't be afraid. If your employer is happy to work with you and they are okay to reduce their hours, or, you know, they are happy to take leave without pay, or they are happy to go on a sabbatical for a while, what you need to do is just make sure that you go back to your covering industry award and make sure you go through a consultation period and you formalize any agreements. It's really important. You just can't have that verbal agreement, he said, she said, golden handshake. You need to be able to say, yes, we did have an informal meeting. We did understand first. Once we got a better understanding of where the employee sat and what they sort of felt as being a suitable arrangement, we undertook a consultation process. We formalized that and we provided that to the employee. We've done everything as reasonably practicable.
It's all nice and documented.
And I would say to you, having been on the other side of some of this stuff, you know, gone through the uglier times as well, with some of the stuff you have to deal with as an employer sometimes, I would argue that having the support and getting the advice before you take action, making sure the action you take is by the book and documented and signed off on, that's your dotting your I's and crossing your T's, which is essential as an employer. I've got another question. What happens if I contract COVID at work? Where does that leave you as an employer?
That is so hard to prove.
Well, you can potentially argue it if someone else is...
I got it at the supermarket.
Yeah, I know that, but you can try and argue things. You don't know in this day and age. I just want to ask the general question, where does that leave you?
There's no clear answer because you have to be able to prove, someone has to be able to prove they contracted it at work, and there is no, and I think Anita's right. You know, how can you prove that that's the case? And, you know, unless you know that you've been working with somebody that has been diagnosed with coronavirus, again, that comes down to that workplace health and safety aspect. What I would be doing as a business is if somebody did present to the workplace that they were demonstrating signs that, you know, we want to get them, we don't want them in the workplace, or we would be putting notifications up on our windows saying, if you are demonstrating signs of coronavirus or COVID-19 or anything, you need to let us know, give us a call. We'll talk, you know, we'll organise the workplace to ensure that everybody is safe. But
yeah,
unless you're sort of overseas and your employer has said, hey, Al, I want you to go to Wuhan, or I want you to go to Spain or Italy, you know, and they contracted over there because they were directed to go there, then, you know, you'd be in a situation where you'd probably find that the employee would probably have to be paid until such times as they get better. But I think it's to be taken on a case-by-case basis.
No, that's cool. And further to the question before about the casual and the JobKeeper allowance, they've got a specific situation where that employee, the casual, wants to try and get the job seeker, and the response for them is that they're refusing to come to the workplace because of concerns of COVID-19. How do you handle that sort of thing?
So as I sort of alluded to a little bit earlier, if an employee is refusing to come to work because they're scared about the COVID-19, you know, talk to the employee, understand why. If they're a casual employee and they're refusing to come into the workplace, if they're a true casual employee, they just don't work, they don't get paid. Again, if it's a regular and consistent employee, I would be talking to them about basically taking leave without pay. Again, there's no guarantee to provide that to the employee. If the employee doesn't want to come to work, that's their decision. You can't force them, you can't make them come to work. But again, think of the alternatives. Talk to the employee about maybe working from home if there's the ability to work from home. An employee can't simply just refuse to come to work because they want to get the job seeker allowance, or, you know, they're worried about getting COVID. It's for me, I think that we would just be having that conversation to understand why, and then setting some very clear expectations around what the consequences are of not coming to work. In that instance, it's going to be, well, we're not going to pay you.
Yeah, and just finally on the questions and answers, do you feel that we've touched on the majority of the consistent questions you're getting day by day at the moment?
You said yes.
Okay, then what I might do you have anything else, Al, you wanted to add before we go to the last couple of slides?
No, I think I've covered everything I needed to. Again, I want to thank all the people that have shown up today and have asked those questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending some time and asking the questions. I hope I've sort of given you some sort of insight as to how we operate as a business and what we do. So I wish you all the very, very best of luck through these very uncertain times, and do be safe. And, one thing I would say to you is on the Employsure website, which is completely free, there are some COVID or coronavirus fact sheets, facts that you can get some answers to, and some tools that you might be able to apply in your workplace as well.
And there's a lot of videos, and
Ed's doing one almost every day.
Ed's doing stuff every day, which has some awesome stuff in it for people to watch, free of charge, to gauge what goes on and listen and learn.
Yeah, so tomorrow between 11 and 12, 11 a.m. and 12 a.m. 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. I've got a colleague of mine, Michael Wilkinson, undertaking a webinar. I'm doing webinars next Monday and Tuesday, so they're free as well. So if you've got your clients or you've got somebody out there, they can go to the Employsure website. There's a little events tab up there. They can click on that events tab and register, and it's free of charge. And a lot of the stuff I've sort of skated across at a high level overview. We focus on a little bit more.
Yeah, and I was going to say, they've got questions then that have cropped up between now and then. So if they hit us, or if not now, I mean, this is going to go out to a very broad database that they can then just jump on, and they can see the expertise that you guys have and get some questions answered.
And again, Leanne's there, and she's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure she'll be happy to help anybody else as well.
So thanks, Al, very much for giving up your time with your family and all that, just for ourselves and our clients. Much appreciated.
Well, I hope I've been of some assistance, and I hope my answers to the questions that have been posed have helped people out, and they're what you're looking for this evening.
That was fantastic, and Leanne, thanks again.
Leanne's got it. I don't know
in a second, but what I just really want to say, and I've said before, we're sharing our team that we have that support us, and we really appreciate you guys coming on board. We always appreciate your support and knowing that you're there. You're at the end of the phone if we need you guys. Our hashtag is support each other, and that's all we're trying to do, is let you guys know that they're here for you too if you want them. So,
Leanne, I might get you back on now.
Yeah, I'm back on. Thanks.
You got a cup of coffee? You're all good?
Or
a stronger drink, but I won't go there.
Not quite yet, but
it's a home office. You can't go there.
Teenage children and all that sort of stuff. It gets all a bit crazy. So, but as Al said, we wish every business, every success in navigating through this. And, if there is anything we can do to help, we are absolutely there for each and every one of you.
I might let you go through this last slide.
It's just a contact slide. If someone does want to reach out or wants some guidance, my phone number's there, or my email, please feel free to reach out. We're doing Zoom calls all the time, and I can get my advice team and some senior advisors on the Zoom to answer specific questions. But please, that's what Employsure are there for. We're there for the employer and to walk side by side with them. So please don't hesitate to contact us.
And I'm assuming that, at least initially, that you'd have a detailed one-on-one consultation with a potential a business owner, and how you guys can complement them and provide them an additional service that they've been lacking, and how that
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's COVID-19 related or just general business overview, and a lot of my clients now are planning to come out of this, and they're looking at options of how they can restructure and get everything sorted in place for when this does all lift. And again, that's what we're there for. So whether it's the COVID-19 or your general business, workplace health and safety, working from home, all that sort of stuff, we can sit down and go through all of that and help them navigate their way.
Yeah.
Cool. And oops, hang on, the slide stopped. Leanne, thank you for you also, because you're on mute when I said this before. Thank you for you giving up your time with yourself and your family and coming on for the benefit of ourselves and our clients, because we're recording this and we're going to be shooting this out to quite a few people, because, you know, there is quite a few that couldn't come on. So,
yeah, of course.
And, you know, it's good to have the ability for those guys to re-watch and re-listen and contact you directly for any questions and issues and comments. And the last slide here, if anyone has any questions that we can handle, because HR is not our strength, that's your strength, which is why you're on. Please feel free to contact us at any point in time as well, and in any way we can help. And look, our focus with this is primarily get all our team that work with us directly to come on and speak about their expertise and what they can do and how they can help business owners. And together we can all make a difference and come through these extremely challenging and difficult times for our business. But I strongly believe that if we can weather this storm and come through, we'll be bigger and stronger and ready to attack in another way at the other end of this. But we've just got to do what we can on every level and every side of this to come out the other side. So thank you so much for your time, Leanne and Al, and to everyone who's been on this call and everyone who will listen. Thank you very much. And from us all here at Superior Accounting, take care until we speak again.
Stay safe.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Bye all.
Take care. Bye-bye.